Wall Street rally continues. Major indices set record highs for the second session in a row after the US Fed stuck with its guidance of 3 rate cuts in 2024. The US dollar and Treasury yields inch higher. The European Stock 600 closes at record highs. The FTSE sees its best day since September after the Bank of England keeps rates unchanged and the Swiss National Bank surprises with a quarter-point rate cut. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade mixed, while the GIFT Nifty suggesting a flat start for the Indian market. In a negative read-through for Indian IT companies, global IT giant Accenture reports flat revenue growth and cuts its fiscal year 2024 growth guidance to 1 to 3% from 2 to 5% earlier. ADR rates of Indian software companies slip. State Bank of India files a compliance affidavit after a rebuke from the Supreme Court in the electoral bonds case. SBI says it has submitted all the details, including the unique codes that will reveal the link between buyers and the recipient political parties. Election Commission has released the data on its website. The Enforcement Directorate arrests Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the Delhi leaker policy. The ED action comes after Kejriwal failed to appear for questioning despite receiving multiple summons. AAP announces nationwide protests while Supreme Court will hear Delhi CM's plea challenging the High Court order in the excise policy case. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra. You're watching Power Breakfast. It's a Friday morning and we do have a lot to catch up on. A lot has happened this week as well. But let's talk about the headlines. And first up, let's take a look at the Asian markets because that is something which has seen a strong handover coming in from the US markets. It's a mixed picture right now that we are seeing. The Taiwanese index, it's absolutely flat with some positive bias, while the Hang Seng has seen some profit booking. It's down around 235 points. What is doing well in the Asian markets is Nikkei because that is one index which has been surging and how above that 40,000 mark, and that continues to be the case. But apart from that, Asian markets have seen some profit booking after yesterday's rally. The GIFT Nifty, that will come up for you on the screen, and that one is indicating that the start for our own markets could be in the red. The implied open is suggesting a downtick of 28 points right now after that stellar rally that we saw across the indices for Indian markets. Let's talk about the US markets now because Wall Street ended Thursday's trading session higher. This led to the major averages closing at new record levels. The Dow closed nearly 270 points higher while the S&P advanced 0.3%. The tech-heavy index, Nasdaq, finished 32 points higher. CNBC's Kate Rogers gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
The markets climbed Thursday as stocks continued their record-setting rally for another day. The Dow added 269 points. The S&P 500 gained 17. The tech-heavy Nasdaq rose by 32 points. The Justice Department sued Apple today in a landmark antitrust case, claiming the iPhone ecosystem is a monopoly that drove the company's astronomical valuation at the expense of consumers. The tech giant is also accused of anti-competitive practices in its advertising, browser, FaceTime, and news offerings. Apple says it will vigorously defend itself against the lawsuit and claims it sets a dangerous precedent. Apple shares fell on the news. Meanwhile, shares of Reddit jumped as much as 70% during the company's debut on the New York Stock Exchange. But shares ended the day at just over $50, 16% higher than the $47 opening price. At its intraday high, Reddit's valuation rose to nearly $11 billion. Today's IPO is the first major social media public offering since Pinterest's debut in 2019. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Okay, all right, let's stay with the U.S. markets and listen into former Federal Reserve Vice Chairman Roger Ferguson, his discussion about Fed's outlook on inflation, as well as Mohammad Al-Arian, Alliance's chief economic advisor, talking about the key takeaways from the Fed's interest rate decision and what to make of Fed Chair Powell's commentary.
Inflation has actually been coming down closer and closer to their target. And I think they are right to say when that is the case, the dual mandate comes into play. Having said that, I don't think that they are seeing a recession. I don't think the staff was forecasting one the way they were, about a year ago or so. Rates are in restrictive territory. We don't know quite how much restriction there is. But if inflation does come down, then it's appropriate for rates to come down somewhat because there's no reason to maintain an overly restrictive stance.
One is a signal that they're willing to tolerate higher inflation for longer. And second, something that is flying below the radar screen is what Chair Powell said about QT, said about the balance sheet, saying that he's willing to slow down the journey to a lower balance sheet. I think that twin patience means that we may well look back on this week as the week in which central banks stepped away from a very strict inflation target.
Okay, all right, that's all about the US markets. Let's now get you the final update on our global market wrap this morning. Positive cues coming in from the European markets as well, with the French CAC gaining 18 points, while the German DAX settled over 60 points higher. However, it was the British FTSE which outperformed regional peers and surged close to 2% in yesterday's session. The pan-European stock 600 index closed at a fresh record high, led by a 3% jump in technology stocks. Okay, let's stay with Europe and get you some important central bank updates now. The Bank of England held interest rates steady as expected. BOE Governor Andrew Bailey said that inflation in the UK is heading towards the right direction for them to start cutting rates. Meanwhile, in a surprise move, the Swiss National Bank cut interest rates by 25 basis points, making the first major central bank to dial back tighter monetary policy, even before the Fed and the ECB. CNBC Sylvia Amaro gets us a roundup of all those decisions and commentary from the governors of the BOE and the SNB.
No surprise from the Bank of England. The central bank decided to keep rates unchanged at 5.25%. However, the voting split among the 9 members of the MPC showed a more dovish tone. No members voted for a rate hike at this meeting. Last month, however, 2 of them had voted in favor of a rate increase. In addition, the governor, Andrew Bailey, said that the economy is moving in the right direction for the bank to start cutting rates.
Inflation has come down. It's come down as we expected. But we have still got some way to go, particularly with what I call the more persistent bits of inflation. That's particularly the services element. It's about half the total basket of prices. That's still at 6%. Now, we don't need to see it come all the way down to a sort of sustainable level, consistent with the target, but we do need to see further progress. But I do want to give this message very strongly. We've had very encouraging and good news. So I think, we can say we're on the way.
The decision from the Bank of England came just a couple of hours after the Swiss National Bank surprised the markets with its own rate cut. Switzerland became the first major economy to cut interest rates after the prolonged rate hiking cycle. The president, Thomas Jordan, told CNBC that the much lower inflation forecasts gave them the necessary confidence to cut rates.
Well, our newest inflation forecast is much lower than the one that we published in December. It's almost 50 basis points lower over the entire forecasting horizon, and that gave us the possibility now to make a rate cut minus 25 basis points.
Okay, all right. We'll do one thing. We'll slip into a short break now. When we come back, we'll tell you how these global cues will impact our own markets. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. We now have our research team joining in with what the trade setup looks like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Very good morning to all of you guys. The biggest cue, of course, is that it's a Friday and we are entering into a longer weekend. So let's enjoy that. But Hormaz, let me come to you. What is the market setup looking like today?
Well, the bulls would be hopeful that Thursday's gains continue as we head into the long weekend. But then there is a roadblock, and that roadblock is IT. And yesterday, after Accenture's earnings that came out, that would be the bigger roadblock for further gains on the IT index. But before that, some key levels to watch on the Nifty. First up will be yesterday's high of 22,080, which was where it encountered resistance and reversed a bit from that highest point of the day. That will be the first level to watch out for. On the downside, yesterday's low, first up 21,941 was yesterday's low, and then of course Wednesday's low of 21,710. Those are some key levels that you need to watch out for the Nifty. As we spoke of roadblocks, Accenture cutting its revenue growth guidance. The stock ended 9% lower overnight, and that had an impact on the US listed Indian companies as well. Infosys' ADR was down 4%, Wipro's ADR was down 2%, so we'll see if there is some negative spillover there as well. The Nifty IT index so far is down 4% this week, and this is its worst weekly performance since April of 2023. So IT will be a sore spot potentially in today's trading session. It'll be interesting to see that the losses that that any potential losses of IT is offset by banking stocks, because the Nifty Bank rebounded yesterday, snapping a 9-day losing streak. It finally respected that 46,300 support and then rebounded from those levels. And from there on this week now, both the Nifty and the Nifty Bank are extremely flat. There is no movement there whatsoever. But the broader markets also, they staged a very smart rebound yesterday. Both the mid cap and the small cap index were up 2.5% each. And the small cap index would like to continue that momentum. And in case that happens, it would be the first positive week for the small cap index in nearly 2 months. So we'll keep an eye out on the broader markets as well. The gold financiers will be in focus today as well, because the gold prices saw some retreat overnight. And another sector to watch out for will be PSUs, because if the market moves higher, high beta tends to move higher faster, as well as we saw yesterday in yesterday's trading session. But IT will be a key roadblock to watch out for today, and the GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly lower start today. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Yes, that's the case. IT will be a big sector to watch out for. But apart from IT, there'll be other stocks in focus as well. Vamakshi has that list. Good morning, Vamakshi.
Well, good morning, Sonal. Like you rightly pointed out, IT stocks will be definitely some stocks that we will be keeping an eye out for, and that is because Accenture has lowered its guidance, like Hormas pointed out, to 1 to 3% from 2 to 5% currently for FY25. They also see a further tightening in spending by clients, more so in smaller projects, and they also see further constraints in 2024 budgets due to weak macros. So keep an eye out on IT stocks. But apart from that, also watch out for Karnataka Bank, because the company has launched a QIP to raise funds with a floor price at 231 rupees per share. Texmaco has also launched a QIP to raise funds up to 250 crores. The floor price is at 162.88 rupees per share. Prestige Estates arm has acquired 62.5 acres of land in Indirapuram Extension NCR for 468 crores. Bharat Dynamics, the board has gone ahead and approved stock split in the ratio of 1:2 and interim dividend of 8.85 rupees per share. They've also appointed G. Gayatri Prasad, who is currently the General Manager of Finance, as the CFO with effect from March 21st. NLC India will be considering raising up to $600 million in foreign currency loan via ECBs on March 27th. Sarda Energy's JV Natural Resources Energy has received an LOI for composite license for Surajgarh 1 iron block in Maharashtra. Tata Chemicals has received a penalty notice of 104 odd crores from Income Tax Department. And lastly, keep an eye out on Tata Communications, because they are looking to hive off the company's new edged digital services business to its wholly owned subsidiary Nova Mesh on a slump sale basis, and this is for a cash consideration of 458 crores.
Okay, that's a long list. Thank you, Vamakshi, for joining us with that. And let's talk about all the cues from the F&O space. Manglam is joining us now. Hey, Manglam.
Well, you know, it is the Nifty that conquered the 22,000 mark once again in yesterday's trading session after what was a good trading session. Though the FIs, they continue to sell in the cash market, 1,800 crore worth selling, 3,200 crore worth purchased by the DIIs. The FIs, however, bought in index futures after a very long streak of selling. They bought about 440 crores, and as a result of which, the long exposure has inched mildly higher from 31% to 33% itself. And as a result of that as well, the FI net shorts, which were high at 95,000 yesterday, have increased or rather reduced to around 89,350 contracts. Nevertheless, there is still a lot of shorts in the system. And that explains why the Nifty could perhaps be in the range. The 50-day moving average has been conquered, 21,937. That would be a strong support at the lower end. And on the way up, 22,174, which is the 20-day moving average, would be a bit of a resistance as well. And option writers have positioned themselves for exactly this range. If you look at the 22,000 call, premium of 190, telling you near 22,200, there would be resistance. 22,000 put, on the other hand, has a premium of 90 rupees, telling you again that 21,910 could be an important support to watch out for. The Nifty Bank has also broken above the 50-day moving average. The next thing to watch out for would be whether it can conquer the falling 20-day moving average itself. The IT stocks, as everyone has been pointing out, will put a bit of a lid on the gains that we can see in the frontline index. We did see short covering in PFC and REC yesterday, and as we pointed out, SAIL has re-entered F&O ban, and the possibility of RBL Bank and Hind Copper coming out of F&O ban has materialized. So those stocks will also be in focus.
Okay, all right. Thank you guys for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. We'll slip into a break. When we come back, we'll get you all the cues from the commodities market. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, where we spoke about a whole host of things, global markets, Indian markets. It's time to talk about commodities. Manisha Gupta is joining us with all the update from that market. Hi, Manisha. Good morning.
Morning, and thank you for that, Sonal. I'll start with the crude oil prices, where we almost did $88 yesterday, but we have seen a huge amount of profit taking come in the overnight market, so holding back at around 85 right now. The prices have seen a decline because of the strong US dollar, which comes in after the Bank of Switzerland hiked rates there. Apart from that, there is also conversation on the Gaza ceasefire possibility, and that has taken some premium off the prices. But the crude prices will continue to be supportive because the U.S. inventories, one, have continued to decline. And second, because of the Ukraine attacks on Russia refineries, nearly 10% of that capacity is in a shutdown mode right now. So we are looking at contradicting fundamentals. In any case, the kind of rise that we saw in crude oil prices, some profit taking ahead of the weekend perhaps was coming. And that's exactly the scenario that you've seen in metals also. After hitting an all-time highs in gold because of the US dollar strength, you have seen profit taking coming in for gold. The markets will watch out for buying on these dips because the geopolitical tensions, the election year in many countries, also the fact that the central banks are buying quite strongly will keep the gold prices supportive. Now, when it comes to the industrial metals, here as well, there is a bit of a profit taking coming in. Because of the strength in US dollar, copper, zinc, aluminum, which were trading at a multi-week and a multi-month highs, have seen some profit taking coming in. But most of the market is advising to buy these dips because with the kind of China data that we have seen and the expectation of further stimulus, this is perhaps a place you could start accumulating at.
Okay, all right. So that's what's happening in the commodity markets. Thank you so much, Manisha, for joining us as always with the update. Let's move on now. The Election Commission has uploaded all the documents related to electoral bonds, which is submitted by State Bank of India, including the unique alphanumeric details of bonds. Unique bond numbers would reveal the link between the buyers and the recipient political parties. SBI filed a compliance affidavit with the Supreme Court stating they have submitted all the details relating to the purchase and redemption of the electoral bonds. Well, moving on to the other big national news. Delhi Chief Minister and Aam Aadmi Party leader Arvind Kejriwal has been arrested from his residence by the Enforcement Directorate in connection with the Delhi liquor policy scam. The development came hours after the Delhi High Court rejected his plea seeking protection against any coercive action in the excise policy-linked money laundering case. The Delhi Chief Minister had also skipped nearly 9 summons issued to him in the money laundering case. The AAP leader becomes the first sitting Chief Minister to have been arrested. The minister will argue his own case in the Supreme Court today. Okay, all right, let's move on now. For all you cricket lovers, the Indian Premier League will be getting underway later this evening with the Royal Challengers Bangalore facing off against the defending champions Chennai Super Kings in Chennai. The match will begin at 8 p.m. and will see MS Dhoni return to action in what could possibly be his last season in the tournament. The former Team India skipper has also resigned as the CSK captain and has handed it over to Ruturaj Gaikwad. The announcement of his resignation as skipper came a day ahead of the start of IPL, capping a glorious stint that saw Captain Cool lift the IPL trophy 5 times. Okay, all right, so it was a power-packed show, but we'll take your leave now. But stay tuned, Bazaar Morning Call comes up next with all the market action, and there's a lot of it. Stay tuned.